Many years ago, there was a very, very righteous man known as Rabbi Mordechai of Chernobyl. In his household, there was a young man who had terrible, terrible afflictions. He had psoriasis all over his body, boils, often oozing, that caused him such pain you could not believe. It was his job to stoke the fires in the winter to keep the house warm. And it was very strange to the students, the Hasidim of the Chernobyler Rebbe, how every single time he would see this young man in such pain, he remained silent. After all, he was known for his sensitivity, for his care for all those suffering from afflictions, and they couldn't understand why he would remain silent through all of this. One day, the Chernobyler returned home, and this young man was suffering worse than ever. He was on the ground crying, screaming, wailing, blood pouring from all these different boils. And in that moment, the Chernobyler seemingly couldn't handle it any longer. And he said, "Hashem, creator of the universe, enough is enough." That very same day, this young man passed away. The Hasidim knew that this could not be for nothing. Something wasn't ordinary about this whole interaction. And so eventually they pressed on and they asked the Chernobyler to explain. And he recounted the following story. He explained that his father, Rabbi Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl, had preceded him and was a really righteous individual. His household was unfortunately poverty-stricken. They didn't have much money. Now, there was a wealthy man in the community that was always there to support financially all of the Chernobyler Rebbe's needs. And he, in a sense, held up the household financially on his own. Eventually, this man realized just how dear and special he was to the Chernobyler that he decided to try and take advantage of the opportunity. And he went up to Rabbi Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl and he suggested that he allow his own child to marry one of the children, the offspring of the Chernobyler Rebbe. The Chernobyler immediately refused. No matter how much he pressed, he refused. Obviously, the man agreed to not only pay for the price of the wedding, but to give a major dowry to support them for years. No matter what he offered, the Chernobyler refused. This man turned from being his greatest benefactor to a fierce opposition to the Rebbe, trying to aggravate him at every twist and turn because of this whole refusal to allow his child to marry the child of the Chernobyler. One night, this man discovered that the Chernobyler's now married daughter was going to be immersing in the mikveh and returning home at a certain hour. And he hired a bunch of ruffians, hoodlums, to go and torment her. And indeed they did so. As she was walking, she was fearful for her life as they followed her and they catcalled at her and they said disgusting things to her. She found her way through loopy side alleys and the like until eventually she got home and collapsed on the ground. Word got around the household and it took months before she was able to recover and really get over this traumatic episode. Eventually, the Chernobyler found out that this man was behind it. And when he did, his fury knew no ends. Shortly thereafter, this man passed away. And when his soul came up to the heavens, right away the heavenly court began its litigation. And because of the way he had afflicted this major righteous individual, the Chernobyler Rebbe, it was about to be decreed that he suffer immensely in Gehinnom. However, one of the angels pointed out that he also did a lot of good in his life. What about the hours of Torah study he had? What about financially supporting the Chernobyler for so many years? After great deliberation, it was decided that two angels would escort the soul of this man down back to the Chernobyler and to see if he could maybe get some forgiveness and therefore have all these good deeds that he did be counted, and maybe, just maybe, it could outweigh and push him through that he no longer needed to suffer so immensely in Gehinnom. Indeed, this happened. the soul of the man was escorted down with these two angels, and they came to the Chernobyler, and it was explained to the Chernobyler why the soul was here. And he says, okay, go ahead, list one by one all the sins that you did to me and to my household. And so he began with the first one, and the Chernobyler said, I hereby completely and utterly with all my heart forgive you. And then continued with the next one and the next one. Again, I completely, wholeheartedly forgive you. Finally, he came to that night where he had hired these ruffians to torment the daughter of the Chernobyler. And to this, the Chernobyler responded, no, absolutely not. That was not only an affront to me, it was an affront to my offspring and an affront to heaven, something I simply cannot forgive you for. And with that, the case was closed and the soul returned to heaven with these two angels. It was decided that this man would be reincarnated in order to suffer, to make amends for what had gone wrong. The Chernobyler, Rabbi Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl, passed away, and his son, Rabbi Mordechai, who recounted the story, succeeded him. He told his Hasidim that right after he took over the leadership, his father came to him in a dream and told him that there was a young man with terrible suffering and affliction that he should hire to be in his household. This man was the reincarnation of that wealthy man that had tormented his father so. And when he had felt that this man had learned his lesson, had suffered enough, it was in his hands to decree that he could move on. And that is why that day when he heard him wailing and screaming, this young man, from his pains, and Rabbi Mordechai of Chernobyl said, enough, God, please, enough, that soul had realized its rectification and was able to move on. So you see, he said to his Hasidim, now you understand why I was quiet during all his pain and suffering for all those years. It was because he was fulfilling a sentence.